what's crazy is we were talking about two AFC North teams earlier this week that right now in week 2, it already feels like their seasons might be over. We're talking about the Bengals because they've lost Joe Burrow until at least December 14th, if not longer. Any team that loses their franchise quarterback, you can almost kiss your playoff hopes goodbye. And last year, even with them, they didn't make the playoffs. Then we just saw the Browns. We saw the drumming that the Ravens put on, despite them having a phenomenal defense. And it just doesn't feel good that their 40-year-old quarterback, and then you got two rookies who don't seem to be able to overtake him. The Browns don't look like a playoff team. So that's half of the AFC North. But we didn't get to really talking too much about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, yes, they beat the Jets in week 1, but they got pounded and just beat into submission against the Seattle Seahawks this last week, to the point, Bobby, not only was the score lopsided, I believe 31-17, something like that, but now you've got Pittsburgh Twitter fan accounts saying, uh-oh, I think we've lost our aura. Here's the Blitzburg. Some of you might follow him or have seen him on Twitter. They put up this caption saying, never seen another team like this on the sidelines in Pittsburgh. I'm going to show you the video in just a second. The aura is gone. No one is afraid anymore of the Steelers. Right next to it, Bobby, The Athletic has a story about it. The Seahawks hijack Renegade, as we know in Baltimore. We've been seeing this for years. It's always in the fourth quarter when they need a big defensive stand or need a big moment. They play the Renegade song. And then all the yellow towels come out and the crowd is rocking. The stadium is rocking. Well, the Seahawks weren't intimidated at all. And as Blitzburg had posted, here's what it looked like at, say their name of their stadium again. I can't get over that it's not Heinz Field anymore.
Acrisure.
Acrisure. So here they are. They've got the Renegade song going. I see more white towels from the team of the Seahawks than I'm seeing gold towels. And I get that they're not showing the crowd as much, but the Seahawks are just completely unintimidated, not afraid. In fact, they're like, you know what? I kind of like this song. I'm going to use it for me. I'm not going to be intimidated. And so, yeah, I don't see any aura going on there for the Steelers. And what's funny, Bobby, though, is even though Blitzburg doesn't remember it, we remember it. The Ravens back in 2022, similar thing. Look at Marlon Humphrey with his towel acting like he's like playing a guitar. Calais Campbell, like it's almost as if the song was made for the Ravens, not the Steelers. It's not working anymore. Has it for a few years against the Ravens. They're not intimidated by it. But now it's an NFC team coming in being like, what is this doing? All it's doing is pumping me up. Doesn't do anything for you right now.
Yeah, this is interesting, Sarah, because obviously kind of feels like in recent years, Mike Tomlin and company, while overperforming maybe based on roster construction and expectations that came with that, it has felt like when you check in with their fan base and you see tweets like from Blitzburg, what you just had up on the screen, it does kind of feel like they're hanging on by a thread of the Pittsburghs of old. And obviously they've been in a really quarterback, I don't want to say purgatory, but a quarterback carousel since Ben Roethlisberger retired. They have not been able to figure out a successful succession plan for Big Ben whatsoever. And we're going to learn a lot about these Steelers over the course of the next couple weeks. So out of the gate, they beat the Jets 34-32 in week 1. And then they lost to Seattle, as you mentioned, 31-17. That was at home. And how Mike McDonald and company did it was, Steelers had very little ground game going. They turned the football over twice. Those were Aaron Rodgers interceptions. On the ground in terms of rushing yards, just 72. They were outgained in terms of total yardage, 395 to 267. So Cowboys won in the trenches, Seahawks won in the trenches. It's funny that they actually, from a overall turnover stand, they both had 2 turnovers. So it's not like, the Steelers won the turnover battle or lost the turnover battle, should I say. They were terrible on third down, 5 of 15. And so when you take a look ahead, though, when I was saying a second ago, we're about to learn a lot about them. You've got New England in a rebuild at New England coming up in week 3. You've got a quarterback-less Minnesota Vikings at home in week 4. They're going to have Carson Wentz starting for them, and they just signed Desmond Ridder. J.J. McCarthy's got a high ankle sprain, their rookie. And obviously, Sam Darnold is with the Seahawks now. So that whole experiment last year that worked really well for the Vikings is no longer. Then they've got Cleveland. Then they've got the quarterback-less Bengals. There's a lot of quote-unquote winnable games on this roster, on this schedule for them over the next several weeks. They have a week 5 bye, which is really early, just like the Ravens. It's not week 5, but they both have early bye weeks. And then they have Green Bay, their true test in week 8. There's not a lot of tests leading up to that. So there are some winnable games coming up, but if they're not winning these winnable games, you're going to learn a lot about what the Steelers are all about in this Aaron Rodgers potentially 1-year era that they're living in right now.
Yeah, and speaking of Aaron, I mean, like you said, it was really just a one-dimensional offense because they couldn't get the run game going. Same thing happened with the Browns. You can't have 40-year-old quarterbacks dropping back as much as they are. You need a ground game. I remember when you and I were debating in the offseason whether or not Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to succeed, you talked about all the pieces around him. You're like, well, the Steelers have a better defense than the Jets did. And they do a better job of like the ground game that will be able to complement him. Those were some of the things that was necessary in order for him to have like kind of one last, big season before he retires. But again, 37 dropbacks, that's not what you want for your 41-year-old quarterback. He only had 18 completions on those, 203 yards, only 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. His passer rating, Bobby, 58.0 from a former Super Bowl MVP and multi-time MVP, 58.0 passer rating. Woof. And then the defense, the Steelers defense, which is supposed to be its calling card, they let Sam Darnold overcome 2 interceptions. The Steelers defense of old that I know would have eaten them alive after getting 2 interceptions, but Sam Darnold was still able to bring them back and ended up with an 89.8. Not great, but certainly better than a 58.0. So knowing that the defense gave up 30-plus points and this offense only scored about 17, they had a debate on First Take earlier this week about, hey, what's the bigger concern in Pittsburgh? Is it the offense or defense? And Bobby, just the phrasing of the question already lets you know they're not in a good position. If you're asking, hey, is the offense or defense a greater concern? That's no good. But as we all know, Stephen A. Smith, he is first and foremost a Steelers fan. So here was his take along with Woody afterwards.
I think it's the defense, me personally, because the Steelers have already given up as many 30-point games in the first 2 games of this season than they did all of last season. I'm very, very concerned about that, and I'm very, very concerned because of injuries. Joey Porter Jr. is out. Deshaun Elliott is out. Yesterday during the game, Alex Highsmith, Isaiah Loudermilk, Patrick Queen, and Peyton Wilson all left the game due to injuries. And so now you're expecting at least a couple of them to miss a couple of weeks or so because of the high ankle sprains, and they're already depleted. And so I'm very, very concerned about that because they can't stop the run. They're surrendering about 150 yards a game. 4.4 yards a carry. You look at Kenneth Walker III right there. That's 19 yards. He walked into the end zone untouched. 19 yards and nobody touched him. That's not a Steelers defense that I'm accustomed to seeing. And that's what has me concerned. Coming into this season, we expected their defense to be stout. It was their offense that we had legitimate questions about. I'm not saying you still don't have those questions about the offense because they can't run the football. Najee Harris is going to the Chargers. 1 year, $5.25 million. You would have thought you could have kept her for that amount of money, but they didn't do so. And so now you're relying on Warren, who can ball, but you're not getting much help, much production from your running back spot. So these are the Steelers that can't seem to run and can't stop the run, but also got a bevy of injuries in their secondary, and they're giving up 30-plus points. Right now, the defense would be more of a priority for me than the offense in terms of what's ailing them. But across the board, things don't seem good right now as far as I'm concerned. But it's only week 2, and they did win week 1. So Aaron Rodgers, I think, is absolutely right. You got to roll with the highs and the lows the same way. You can't overreact to either.
You would?
Yeah, listen, I'm more concerned about the offense. Yeah. And here's why, because they cannot run the football. And like the whole premise of this offense under Arthur Smith, they want to run it and they want play action pass. Mm-hmm. When you take away the run aspect, you basically put everything on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was sacked 4 times last week against the Jets with even more, countless more pressures. That Seattle defense, got after Aaron Rodgers again. Guys, we're talking about a 41-year-old quarterback that's right now playing in a one-dimensional offense. If they can't run the football, it will be open season on Aaron Rodgers, and he will, trust me, he will not last throughout the season under the constant barrage of opposing defenses because they're one-dimensional. So I got the offense.
Hey, legitimate arguments from each one, which is good news in Baltimore. You got people more concerned with each. Both have legitimate arguments. The Ravens don't feel bad for the Steelers.
Not great so far. This is the formula that will lead to failure for Pittsburgh, quite frankly. I mean, he's already been sacked 7 times, Sarah. And to Damian's point, he's 41 years old. He doesn't have the mobility. Never really had true mobility as it is. Sort of that prototypical prolific passer in the pocket that we've seen for, multiple decades from the guy. But this is the failure formula so far. Now, granted, look, this game was a lot closer than I think the final score indicates. Pittsburgh gave up 17 fourth quarter points to Seattle. So you think about that going into the fourth quarter. This was a game. This was anybody's game. But much like the Ravens did week 1, it was a fourth quarter collapse by that defense. And certainly doesn't help that there were 2 interceptions thrown in there, like we mentioned too, from Rodgers. So he's already been sacked 7 times through 2 games. It's a young and inexperienced offensive line. They do not have a ground game right now that will allow for complementary football. As Stephen A. mentioned, you've got injuries to boot, defensively speaking. This is tough. But like I said, over the next 3 or 4 weeks, you can kind of mask some of this with some lesser opponents that are coming up on your schedule. But when you put them up against the Ravens, while I still could see one of those fluky regular season splits when it comes to the rivalry, there's such a talent gap here that you got to sweep that regular season series like you do with Cleveland and then allow at some point for that letdown to happen, whether it be, maybe, well, I would say it's Cincinnati, but they're without Joe Burrow for the next 3 months. So we'll have to see. I mean, it's easy to sit here and be like, oh, the AFC North is the Ravens, but you know how it goes in this division.
Well, it is the Ravens.
It is the Ravens, but
there
it
could
also
be a fluke. But at this point on paper, the Ravens, division games are different. So if it weren't division, like I would say that the Ravens should sweep all 3 of these teams. They've already beaten the Browns. Without Joe Burrow, they should sweep the Bengals. They just do not have a defense that should be able to slow Lamar Jackson and company. And the Steelers, again, like you said, it's fluky. So maybe the Steelers could get one, but it is the Ravens division. It's the Ravens division to lose. It's the Ravens who would need to absolutely collapse. Like I said in the offseason, Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers team didn't scare me. Same thing can still happen because it's the division, but the AFC North should be an easy run into the end zone slam dunk for the Ravens at this point.
Of course it should be. We'll see.
And it most likely will be. I think it's like, again, fluky stuff, but like what percentage would you give it to the Ravens? Like what percent would you say, okay, I feel 90% confident that the Ravens are going to win the division? 95%? I mean, as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, I'm close to that 95% and above that the Ravens are going to win this division.
Yeah, it's a hefty confidence level. I guess I would, and I'm not even sure you're saying this, but I would just push back against like the whole, like, hey, they're sweeping the division for the rest of the way. There's just
I wouldn't predict that they will, but they should. Like that, They should. But again, winning it, I'm like 95% plus confidence level.
There's a significant talent gap. It's them and it's the rest of these 3 teams. And we'll see how fluky AFC North football gets when it's the Steelers in particular. I don't see a lot of flukiness this year with Cleveland, especially since they won't see them for a while. Who knows? When the next time they see them, Sarah, Cleveland could be out of the playoff contention, the next time they see them. And we'll see if Jake Browning's able to, keep the Bengals at least in it mathematically. They won't see them until Thanksgiving night, and then they'll see him twice in a 3-week stretch. So yeah, I mean, we're on the same page here that they should absolutely win this division handily. And we'll see if Pittsburgh over the next few weeks can kind of right this ship to, Pittsburgh. Clearly this fan base has a sour taste in their mouth coming off a Seattle game where, again, they surrendered 17 fourth quarter points. So not good enough at all.